Why did Rhaenyra send Mysaria away? House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 8 explained. Warning, this video contains major spoilers for House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 8, including Rhaenyra's decision to exile Mysaria, Helena's final storyline, and the major changes in Rhaenyra's character. One of the most surprising decisions in the Season 3 finale happens when Rhaenyra sends Mysaria away. For much of the season, Mysaria has been one of Rhaenyra's closest advisors. She helped her understand King's Landing. She built a network of spies. She supported Rhaenyra when she was losing confidence. And their relationship became much more personal than a normal political alliance. So why would Rhaenyra suddenly tell Mysaria to leave? Was Mysaria fired because she failed as Rhaenyra's spy master? Did Rhaenyra discover that Mysaria betrayed her? Or was something much deeper happening between them? The answer is actually connected to the biggest change happening inside Rhaenyra herself. Let's break it down. 1. Mysaria wasn't just Rhaenyra's spy master. To understand why Rhaenyra sends her away, we first need to understand how important Mysaria became to her. Mysaria wasn't simply another member of Rhaenyra's council. She was someone Rhaenyra trusted personally. Mysaria understood the small folk. She understood how information moved through King's Landing. And she had built a network capable of discovering things that the royal court couldn't. She also became one of the few people willing to challenge Rhaenyra emotionally rather than simply agreeing with everything she said. That made Mysaria extremely valuable, but it also made her dangerous to the new version of Rhaenyra. Because Mysaria represented something Rhaenyra was beginning to abandon: mercy, restraint, and the belief that winning the war should not mean becoming the kind of ruler she hated. That is why her departure is much more important than simply firing a spy. 2. Rhaenyra had started changing earlier in the series. Rhaenyra repeatedly tried to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. She wanted to end the war without destroying the realm. Even when she had enormous military advantages, she hesitated to unleash her dragons against cities and armies. Mysaria often reinforced that side of her personality. She reminded Rhaenyra that ordinary people were suffering. She pushed her to think about the small folk rather than just the Iron Throne. But by Season 3, Episode 8, Rhaenyra has reached a breaking point. Too many people have died. Too many opportunities for peace have disappeared. And now she is facing the reality that simply being compassionate may not be enough to win. Her attitude toward power has changed, and Mysaria can see it. That is one of the most important reasons their relationship reaches its breaking point. 3. Did Mysaria betray Rhaenyra? This is where things become confusing. The episode creates a situation in which Mysaria's actions indirectly contribute to Helena learning things that Rhaenyra did not want revealed. Mysaria warns Helena about the danger surrounding her pregnancy and the political situation. That information ultimately becomes part of the chain of events leading to Helena's final confrontation with Rhaenyra. But Rhaenyra's decision to send Mysaria away is not simply presented as, "You betrayed me, so you're fired." 4. Why does Rhaenyra give Mysaria money? This is an important detail. If Rhaenyra genuinely believed Mysaria was an enemy who had betrayed her, she could have imprisoned her. She could have executed her. Instead, she offers Mysaria money and sends her away. That tells us something. Rhaenyra isn't necessarily saying, "I hate you." She's saying, "You cannot remain here." That's a very different kind of separation. Rhaenyra even gives Mysaria the opportunity to leave Westeros and start a new life. That suggests there is still affection between them. But Rhaenyra has decided that Mysaria can no longer be part of the path she's choosing, and that path is becoming increasingly violent. 5. Mysaria was Rhaenyra's moral compass. This may be the most important part of the entire storyline. Mysaria frequently reminded Rhaenyra that the people of Westeros mattered. She wasn't interested only in noble families and royal bloodlines. She cared about people at the bottom of society. That made her an important counterbalance to characters like Daemon. Daemon's philosophy is much simpler. If someone stands in your way, remove them. If your enemy refuses to surrender, destroy them. If fear can win the war, use fear. Rhaenyra spent much of the series caught between these two approaches. Mysaria represented one side, Daemon represented the other. And in Episode 8, Rhaenyra increasingly chooses Daemon's path. That is why Mysaria has to go. 6. Why is Daemon important to this decision? Daemon's influence over Rhaenyra has always been complicated. He loves her, but he also represents a much more ruthless approach to power. He understands that wars aren't won through kindness alone. By the end of Season 3, Rhaenyra is beginning to accept that reality. She has spent years trying to be different from the people who came before her. But now she is starting to believe that the only way to survive is to become more ruthless herself. That creates a direct conflict between her and Mysaria. Mysaria wants Rhaenyra to remain connected to her humanity. Daemon is pushing her toward the reality of war. And Rhaenyra ultimately decides that she cannot continue listening to both voices. She chooses the harder path. 7. Is Rhaenyra sending Mysaria away to protect her? This is another possible interpretation. Rhaenyra knows exactly how dangerous the situation has become. Anyone close to her can become a target. Mysaria has already made powerful enemies. Her spy network makes her vulnerable. And Rhaenyra's enemies could easily use her relationship with Mysaria against both of them. So sending her away may partly be an attempt to protect her. There is also a personal element. Rhaenyra knows that Mysaria is one of the few people who can still reach her emotionally. If Rhaenyra continues down the path toward violence, Mysaria will inevitably challenge her. By removing Mysaria from the court, Rhaenyra eliminates that conflict. But she also loses one of the people who could have stopped her from going too far. And that may be exactly what makes the decision tragic. 8. Why does Mysaria look so shocked? Mysaria's reaction tells us that she didn't expect this. She appears to understand that something has changed in Rhaenyra. The woman standing in front of her isn't exactly the same queen she had been advising. Rhaenyra has become harder, more determined, and more willing to accept the brutal realities of war. Mysaria can see that, and that's why the separation feels painful rather than simply political. Mysaria isn't just losing her position, she's losing Rhaenyra. The person she trusted is changing into someone she may no longer recognize. 9. What does Mysaria's departure say about Rhaenyra? This is where the storyline becomes much bigger than their personal relationship. Rhaenyra's decision shows that she is entering a new phase. Earlier, she wanted to win the war while remaining morally different from her enemies. Now she is beginning to accept that power may require cruelty. That's a dangerous transformation. Because once a ruler decides that compassion is a weakness, there is very little stopping them from becoming the thing they once feared. The finale makes that transformation increasingly obvious. Rhaenyra is no longer simply trying to reclaim her father's throne. She's becoming determined to control the outcome of the war at almost any cost. 10. Why does this matter for the ending? Mysaria's departure is important because it removes one of Rhaenyra's strongest emotional restraints. After Mysaria leaves, Rhaenyra is surrounded by people who are much more willing to accept violence as a solution. Daemon is preparing for war. The armies are moving. The dragons are being used. And Rhaenyra is becoming increasingly willing to make decisions that earlier versions of herself would have questioned. That makes Mysaria's departure symbolic. It's almost like Rhaenyra is saying goodbye to the last part of herself that still believed there might be a peaceful way through the conflict. And that's why the scene feels so abrupt. It is supposed to feel like something has changed. Final thoughts. So, why did Rhaenyra send Mysaria away? The simplest answer is that their relationship had reached a point where Rhaenyra could no longer accept Mysaria's influence. But it wasn't simply because Mysaria was a bad spy master. It wasn't simply because she failed. And it wasn't necessarily because Rhaenyra suddenly stopped caring about her. The real reason is much more personal. Mysaria represented the moral side of Rhaenyra that was beginning to disappear. For much of the story, Mysaria encouraged Rhaenyra to think about ordinary people, mercy, and the cost of war. But Rhaenyra is changing. After everything she has suffered, she is beginning to believe that compassion alone cannot win the Iron Throne. And as she embraces a more ruthless strategy, Mysaria becomes increasingly incompatible with the person Rhaenyra is becoming. That is why the decision hurts. Rhaenyra isn't simply firing an employee, she's cutting away a part of her own identity. And there is another important detail. She doesn't execute Mysaria. She doesn't imprison her. She gives her money and sends her away. That suggests Rhaenyra still cares about her. She may even believe that Mysaria deserves a chance to live somewhere far away from the war. But Rhaenyra also knows that she cannot keep Mysaria beside her while choosing this new path. The tragedy is that Mysaria may have been exactly the person Rhaenyra needed at this moment. Someone who could tell her when she was going too far. Someone who could remind her that the people she wanted to rule were not simply pieces on a board. Someone who could challenge her decisions instead of being afraid of her. By sending Mysaria away, Rhaenyra gains freedom, but she also loses her conscience. And that may be the real meaning of the scene.
Rhaenyra has spent the entire dance trying to prove that she is different from the rulers who came before her. Now, after years of war, grief, betrayal, and loss, she is beginning to believe that she has to become ruthless to survive. Mysaria sees that transformation, and she knows she cannot follow Rhaenyra down that road. So their separation isn't really about a spy being dismissed, it's about two people realizing that they no longer believe in the same future. Mysaria wants Rhaenyra to remain the woman who cares about the people. Rhaenyra has decided that becoming queen may require her to become something much harder. And that is why sending Mysaria away could become one of the most important decisions Rhaenyra makes in Season 3. Because sometimes the most dangerous moment for a ruler isn't when they lose an army. It's when they lose the person who is still willing to tell them they might be wrong.